context of white supremacy, Gus T Renegade in for another program. Hopefully it will be constructive. If you do not find the program to be of constructive value, please find something else to do with your time and energy. We do not want victims of white supremacy to waste time. This will be part 2 with our guest, Dr. Khalif Muhammad, aka SynQ. He will be with us in about 9 minutes. Just spoke with him, and he had a few things to take care of before we kick off with the broadcast. I will take this time to, I guess, update the lineup for the next, I don't know, 7 days or so. We have, I think, like 7 consecutive days of programs. We'll be back tomorrow with Professor David Crockett. He was originally scheduled to be with us this past Sunday, but he is working hard to be a parent, and he had to take care of his offspring, and so we rescheduled. He'll be with us tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, and 4 p.m. Pacific. He does work on racism and marketing and advertising. He has some very interesting reports on how black people, because we are victims of racism, we have what he terms low cultural capital. And because of our low cultural capital, we compensate in various ways by spending. Very interesting report. He also has a report which talks about credit cards. He has a report that talks about smoking and how black people tend to be more likely to be risk takers, and people that are more likely to be risk takers tend to be more likely to smoke, which is pretty interesting. He also has some research on things that can motivate people to stop smoking. Very interesting. Several other reports, but that's tomorrow. On Thursday, June 24th, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing will be making her 5th visit to the context of white supremacy. Enough said. On Friday, I had several listeners suggested this person. Might be a sign that I'm on my job, might not, but all of the people who suggested that I have Friday's guest on the program, they were all a little bit late, because by the time they made the suggestion, he had already confirmed and we had locked up a date. Friday, June 25th will be Mr. Umar Abdullah Johnson. Also, he is a psychologist. Dr. Welsing is a psychiatrist, but that should be a nice sequence of programs. He does a lot of work with black children and how the educational system is designed to not optimize their development. Among other things, he also, I was researching for that program today, multitasking, and he also has come to the conclusion that non-whites who have a white parent tend to be confused about racism, white supremacy. How about that? Saturday, Dr. Martin Kevorkian. That will be Saturday, June 26th. Dr. Martin Kevorkian will be making, I don't know what trip this is. He's been here a whole lot. But he'll be here Saturday. The 5 films we'll be looking at this Saturday will be Live and Let Die. I would probably break the cowbell if I rung it for all these films, so I'm not going to ring it. But the films will be Live and Let Die, Jersey Girl, Last King of Scotland, Monster-in-Law, and Lakeview Terrace. Those will be the 5 films we'll be looking at. I didn't pick those films, so I get that out from jump. I didn't pick those films. I asked if people heard the program when Dr. Kevorkian was with us last month. I opened it up for listeners to select films that they would like the good doctor to analyze and pick out bits of racism, white supremacy, and those were the 5 films that they selected. I had selected The Godfather, but I rotated that out so that we could do Last King of Scotland, I think. But yeah, those will be the 5 films. I have watched all of those films except for Jersey Girl. That's the only one I haven't seen, and I will make sure I view that one before Saturday. But very interesting themes in all 5 of those films. Should be an interesting program. On Saturday, white people permitting, I will be doing a 3rd program on the Boondocks, picking out just an incredible spike in homosexual content on the Boondocks. The program aired this past weekend on the 20th of June. Pause. They did a so-called satire of Tyler Perry's work and lots of homosexual activity and cross-dressing in that. The program for this week on June 20th will be, I forget the name of the title, the exact name, but Booty Warrior is in the name of the title, and it's about Tom Dubois, who is, of course, married to a white person. He visits a prison, they have a riot, and he has to escape before he is anally raped. Yeah, that'll be Sunday, white people permitting. On Monday, I think it is, I don't want to say the first name, Mr. Jay Morton. There we go, Mr. Jay Morton. He'll be here on Monday. He's done several films on, one of them, documentaries films. One of them is Men to Boys. The other one is What Black Men Think. Talks a lot about racism, white supremacy, and different ways that the system of white supremacy really whoops the public perception of black males and even whoops black people's perception of black males. But he'll be here on Monday evening. I have some other programs coming up too, but that'll get you up for next Monday. Yeah, I think that's everything through next Monday. Yeah, very active. Hopefully it will be constructive. If you don't find the programs to be constructive, as I said at the beginning, please invest your time and energy elsewhere. Let's see, anything else I wanted to report? I think that's about it. It's almost time for me to snare Dr. Muhammad, a.k.a. SynQ. Before I do, I wanted to check because I had an idea for a program of getting black males to share their views on racism, white supremacy. And I had one that I knew I was going to ask if you'd be interested in participating in such a broadcast. I'll ask Mr. Nero before I get Mr. SynQ with us. Or matter of fact, I'll wait and ask later. I believe Mr. Nero is already listening on the line, so that's already been pitched. We can discuss that when I go to the phone lines, but that's already been pitched. I would like to have black males because we did female victims of white supremacy last summer, and I would like to get the other perspective to hear what black males have to say about racism, white supremacy. So I will check to see if Mr. SynQ is ready to roll, and I will play a sound clip. This is pretty much where we ended the Sunday broadcast with Dr. Muhammad. He said he wanted to pick up right there. So for people who have not heard the Sunday, June 20th broadcast yet, this is where we ended this past weekend.
I just know personally from being in a lot of relationships with other non-white people, whether, there's always this constant conflict, this arguing that's going on, this battling, and you say, well, man, I need to find me some way to have peace. And you look at the TV set, and you see, white people living a nice life and, white picket fence and house, and they got their children, and everybody's happy, hunky-dory and everything. You say, man, I want to be like that. And you say, well, every time I see this, I'm in this relationship here. We always arguing over nothing and hollering and screaming, and she's always telling me, what a low-down piece of something I am, and I'm coming.
Can I hit the timeout button here?
Okay.
All right. So hopefully you will go back and check out that program if you were not with us or if you haven't hit the archives for the Sunday broadcast. If you did hear it, then you know where we left off at. Our guest for today's program should be constructive, got lots of positive, constructive feedback from the Sunday broadcast, and thankful he was willing to come back and chat with us for part two. Dr. Khalif Muhammad, a.k.a. Mr. SynQ. How are you doing, sir?
I'm all right, sir. I am still learning.
Ditto. We ran out of time when you were with us before, and we still had quite a few things on the list to get to, so I want to hop right into the material and pick up where we left off. I just played the sound clip. I don't know if you didn't hear the whole thing. I just played the sound clip from about the last 90 seconds or so of the program when you were talking about the strain of racism, white supremacy, and the toll that takes on relationships, particularly when you contrast that when you see you're bombarded with all these images of white people just looking happy and enjoying life. Just don't have a care in the world, and you have to come home to stress and conflict, yourself being a victim of white supremacy and your partner being a victim of white supremacy, if you want to pick up where we left off on Sunday.
Yeah, so I think that part was based on a statement that Cree had made. I think I can't remember exactly what it was that the statement that she made, but it was in reference to what I like to call belly warming. And so with all of that stress and that pressure, I think that choosing to be with a white person, or to have sexual intercourse with a white person, in a lot of ways you think on the surface that it's going to be a relief, like it's going to relieve you of that same kind of pressure that you're in the come on with the cowbell when you're like in your because I know with me just growing up seeing all the negative images that they portray the black female with, with the aggression and she's always mean and just all of these different kind of images that have been thrust for me. I can remember at one time there was a time I said, nope, not for me. I'm not going to be with a black woman. Not me. And I changed that position once I got involved in the nation. But I think some of the motivation behind with me, like I said when I was talking about the person that I ended up with in Alaska, a lot of that was because I was going through the suffering that you catch from the hell that you catch from the system. It kind of left it real open for her to just come right on in and say, hey, he's.
Well, I'm sorry.
So, go ahead.
Oh, no, please. I was just making sure I didn't have a habit of muting myself sometimes, so I wanted to make sure I didn't make an error.
Oh, I see. So I wanted to relate it to the same thing as wanting to take a drink, or going to do some, not like everyone that's listening might have experienced that, but I know a lot of victims of racism. It's evident because of the early rate. A lot of us die early. We die earlier than once you compare us to white people, and a lot of that I think has to do with how unhealthy we exist, the unhealthy lifestyles that we have in our existence. And like some of us may smoke cigarettes to escape the pressure. Some of us may smoke crack to escape the pressure. Some of us shoot heroin to escape the pressure. Others of us will date white people to attempt to escape the pressure. Once you go through it all, it's just you realize it's a temporary thing. It's not. It does not change anything. It does not change anything. In fact, all of those situations make the situation worse. They make they make the situation far worse. And the worst thing that ever that you can possibly have is it's just you get confused. I think in a lot of ways I'm still trying to eliminate a lot of the confusion that I acquired from being in the from being a belly woman.
Wow. I just it's apropos. It's apropos. Indulge me for a moment, folks.
And it may be, and I'm not unwilling to critically look at this. It may be just a personal desire on my part to find a kind of soothing lotion so it doesn't feel so painful what it is that you're saying. So I'm not unwilling to look at that.
Be soothing.
Right.
I didn't even have to set it up. He was referring, that was Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., black male, he says, a so-called recovering victim of white supremacy who is married to an admitted white supremacist. And the white woman, he was not unwilling to admit that might be him searching for soothing lotion. I wanted to remind folks, I believe Dr. Joy DeGruy, actually I don't believe, I read it in her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. She's been a guest here twice. In her book, she talks about seeking a white woman. She references it as a vacation from all the stress and strain of racism, white supremacy. That term she used, and I believe Rajan Prasad, I believe he uses that same term in his book, Why Black Men Date White Women. And even the drug analogy that she used, Tater Pie, she had, I think she referenced it in the exact same way, saying that is like a recall drug for victims of white supremacy, just lining up very nicely.
It's interesting. Yes, sir. Yeah, so after we discussed it the other day, I started doing some more. I was doing more reflection in my mind and going all the way back to very vague images of being 3, but at 5 I can remember more, more things. And I was putting some things on my blog. I haven't posted the post yet that I'm still working on, but the conversation that we had on your radio show about the belly warming made me reflect on all of the indoctrination that I have, I have received from sitting in front of the television set at an early age and thinking about all of the white women that I was constantly blasted with on the TV set and in the movies. It made me think about Shirley Temple. I can remember when I was like 5 years old, and I used to watch Shirley Temple movies that would come on every Sunday. I mean, I was religiously watching Shirley Temple come on every Sunday. I knew the time that it would come on, and I would just be right there ready to come on. And I had this infatuation with her where I was like, man, I think one day she's going to be my girlfriend. And I let my mother know that. And my mother was like, well, son, it's too late. Shirley Temple was an adult by the time I started watching these same shows that you're watching. And I was devastated. I was like, oh, my God. And now at this point, with my frame of mind, I was not aware. So I was aware of my skin color, of my skin being. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like when I look back on it now, I can remember seeing my skin being brown, but watching Shirley Temple, for some reason, I thought I was the same. For whatever reason, what I was watching on TV, I almost want to say I thought I was a white person, but I don't know. There's a little bit of confusion there. I have to do some more thinking into it. But I started reflecting on all the little white girls that I liked in school, in elementary school, and the ones in my block, my neighborhood. There was a bunch of them. I was like, man. And the names just kept coming up. It just kept popping up. And I was like, man, this has been going on for a long time. And it's been like an off and on thing. It's like sometimes I didn't want to. I think most of the time when I was rejected by them was when I said, the heck with them. I don't want to deal with it. You know. And then I'm just, just opening it up, just trying to put it all out there for everybody to hear.
Which, again, I find commendable. I think that has come up on this broadcast before, that for a lot of victims, it's very tough for them to speak honestly about their victimization and how they've been traumatized as a result of racism, white supremacy, and not being able to speak honestly about that doesn't, it really, in my view, it impedes our ability to replace white supremacy with justice, because we end up all just pretending like it's not beating us down every day when, all of us are struggling to deal with this every single day. At least that's what I've concluded. I know I am. Wow. The same way I guess I segued with Dr. DeGrew when I was speaking with her about how non-white people struggle. When I was talking to her, it was how we struggle to confront racism, white supremacy, and as a result, that blows up in our relationships. I'm just going the reverse direction this time. We will seek out that white person as a vacation to get away from the stress and strain of racism, white supremacy, because often when we are with other victims of white supremacy, what we end up doing is fussing with them. And shadowboxing, that's the term Mr. Fuller uses for it, that conflict, as opposed to confronting racist man and racist woman, we will just go and confront another non-white person, blame them for our problems, or fuss at them, tell them how dumb and stupid they are. I guess if you don't mind, if you could share with the listeners, what the concept of shadowboxing is, and I guess how you've experienced that as a victim of racism.
I'm a bit blind to that. I mean, a bit blind to how I have fit into that. I can think of, for me, so the other day, the last time I was on your show, and I was talking about the individual that was a member of the National Alliance of Black Panther, and then the enforcement official that was black, and how the principal at the school had pitted them both against each other over the donations, the food that was donated.
Yes, sir.
That was the first time that I saw that, and I was able to call it shadowboxing, because I had just picked up the code like a little bit before that. But there are some other situations that I cannot, growing up, there were these two white boys that stayed across the street from me. One of them was the same age as I, and in fact, they were both. They were the first white boys that I played with in my habitat on my street, because I played with them in school. But when I moved to this neighborhood, they were like the first that I played with on a regular basis, and they were also Jewish. And so playing with them, they're the ones. I'm not sure if I was on the radio talking to you about the curse of Ham.
We did talk about it, but not on the radio broadcast.
Okay. All right. So these individuals had taught me about the curse of Ham. And basically that was the reason why I was black. That's what they had told me. For about 5 years, it was just me and them that played with each other. All we had, was each other and these two white girls, one that stayed next door to me and the other one that stayed next door to them across the street. She's also Jewish, the one that stayed next door to them across the street. But all of them and myself, for about 5 years that I stayed in that neighborhood, we all played with each other. There was no issues. I mean, as long as I was receiving all of the mistreatment, which is what I'm looking back on it now. Back then, I just was kind of very humble and just took it. Everything ran kind of smooth. And one day, the white girl that stayed next door to me moved out, and a Mexican family moved in. And the oldest one in the Mexican family, he was the same age as me too. So it was me, him, and the white boy across the street. We were all the same age, so we would play together. But the white boy would always pit me and him. He put me and him against each other. And the way he would do it would be like, so if he got upset with me, like there might be something he was going to ask me to do. But I'll tell you what happened was just before the Mexicans moved in, the white boy's father had kicked me. I went over there one day and they tried to ram me down some ice cream. Basically, his mom was like asking me, asked me if I wanted Rocky Road ice cream. And I told her Rocky Road ice cream is nasty. It's got marshmallows in it. She said, well, I made the ice cream for you anyway. Take it. So I'm standing, we're all in the backyard. Me and the two little white boys were in the backyard, and I'm looking at the ice cream and everything. And I'm like, man, I really don't like this. It's got marshmallows in it. I already told her I didn't like it, but she made it for me anyway. What am I going to do? And I'm about, I think I'm like close to, I'm not 10, I'm about 8 or 9 now or something when this happened. But anyway, I didn't like the ice cream, so I saw a little space between the garage and between their garage and a fence. It was like a bunch of junk and stuff back there, and I just threw the ice cream back there. I tried to look around, see if nobody was looking, because the way she forced me to, I thought that she'd be upset if I just went back to her and told her I didn't want it. So I thought nobody was looking. I threw it on the side of this house. I mean, between the garage and the fence. And the boy's father comes up to me and he says, what did you just throw back there? I get scared. I pick up some rocks. I start throwing rocks back there. I say, oh, I was just throwing some rocks. And so he grabs me by my shirt collar and chokes me and says, don't you ever lie to me again. And he kicks me while he's holding me by my shirt collar and tells me to go home. So I felt really embarrassed. I was upset, choked up, ready to cry, but I didn't want him to see I was going to cry. So I went back to my home, and when I got in there, my mother was sitting on the phone, and she was talking on the phone. And she's like, "What's going on? What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Douglas kicked me." She said, "What? Go in the backyard and tell your daddy." And so I went back in the backyard. My dad was in the back raking up some leaves. And when I know I'm telling you this story just to get the shadow boxing. Do you mind?
Take your time, sir.
Okay. So I went back there to the backyard, and he was raking up these leaves in the backyard, and I told him, I said, you know, the white guy's name was Douglas. I said, Douglas. I said, what? And before it was like in a blink of an eye that rake looked like he took off so fast that he just left that rake like kind of standing in the air, and it just flopped over. And I turned around, and he was already running down the side of the house, going back into the house and get where he was going. So I ran back in, got in the house, and I could hear my mom arguing with the white guy on the phone, and telling him that, you know, if he has a problem with me, he needs to come and talk to me, and he doesn't put his hands on me. And so I ran up the front. My dad had already ran out the door. He was heading over there. So I went out to the front yard, and I looked, and I could see my dad standing on their porch. And you couldn't see, so Douglas was like inside his house, but you could tell they were talking, and he had like a screen there. And my dad ripped that screen door. Douglas tried to close the screen door on my dad, and my dad just ripped that screen door off and went in there and started beating the hell out of it. And I ran over there, and then the two little white girls, the one that was next door, she was outside, and the one that was next door to me was outside. The state next door to him was outside. I guess she ran in and got her family, and the other one ran in and got her family. So you had all of these people in this guy's living room watching my dad beat the hell out of him in the living room, and everybody screaming and hollering and stuff. And so I'm thinking, man. So one of the white boys looks at me and said, "Man, this is all your fault." And I got choked up again, and I walked outside, and I went back across the street. And so the white girl that stayed next door to me, she followed me out, and we sat on her porch. And we were sitting there talking, and I was trying to explain to her what happened. And I see a van come up, and this van drives up in this was in the 70s. This is like one of those hippie mobile type vans, one of those Volkswagen. You know, and when I saw it, it reminded me of that thing in Scooby-Doo, that band in Scooby-Doo.
Mr. Machine.
There you go, Mr. It had little flower designs on it and stuff, you know, and it drove up. And this white guy with long hair jumped out and ran inside, right? So me and the white girl, I'm just going to say their names because, I mean, that was so long ago, and I don't know their last names anyway. Whatever, I'm not trying to say. So Tammy, she was the one that stayed next door to me. So Tammy and I were sitting on the porch. When I see the guy go into the house, Tammy's dad jumps over us, and we're sitting on the porch. He opens up the door, and he jumps over us. He's a white person. He jumps over us and runs across the street to go in there, too. So me and her look at each other like, what's going on? We run across the street, too. So he grabs the dude that came in there, the white guy that came in there out the van. He grabs that guy by his hair and pulls him into the other room. And now they're both in there fighting. So they're in there fighting in one room, and my dad and the other guy's fighting in the other room. And I remember my dad grabbed his flower pot and just crushed it over the guy's head. And it was like blood everywhere. And you know, when we saw the blood, like everybody was crying and stuff, came out of there. I don't really remember how it ended, but I remember later on that night, my dad in the middle of the fight had left his glasses over there, and the white guy that kicked me, Douglas, who lost the fight, sent his son over to our house with my dad's glasses and said, "Hey, you left these glasses over here." So my dad got a big kick out of that because he said if it was the other way around, they would have never saw them glasses again. It would have been, you know. But anyway, they had to sit down with me later on to tell me that because I still felt like the whole thing was my fault, and they told me that he should have never kicked me. It was amazing because this whole thing was going on, and you know nobody ever call the enforcement officials or anything. And the thing that struck me was that the white guy that stayed next door to us, he was an admitted racist. He was a very admitted racist, and my dad got along well because of that. Because he was admitted racist, and they just got along better. I mean, as far as we could see, they used to hunt together. They, do all kinds of things, fish together or whatever. And he was just somebody that was an admitted. He wasn't somebody that that gave you the impression that they were going to try to deceive you. Not saying that he did, just saying he never picked up on anything. And it just was another source of confusion for me to know that he was defending my dad. He was helping my dad by fighting this other guy in the other room while my dad was fighting the other one in the other room. So that kind of blew my mind. But anyway, from that moment on, I was no longer allowed to go into that house that was across the street. So Tammy and her moved away, which was the dad that helped my dad out. They moved away, and the Mexican family moved in. And so anytime we play, Josh, which is the white guy, again, would, if I didn't do something the way he wanted it to be done, I can't remember a good example, can't give you a good example because, so long ago, but if I didn't play the way he wanted things to play, then he would just talk to the other guy, Eddie, the Mexican guy, and say, hey, man, let's go in my house, right? And then they would just go in the house. And so I'm left outside. Sometimes I'd be looking in the window like a little dog. That's the best way I could. A sad dog is the best way I could, look at it. It's because I'm looking in the window and I'm watching them play inside, and they're making faces at me and all kinds of stuff. And he used to do this all the time. And pretty soon it got to the point to where the Mexican guys, Mexican boys, they thought that they were in the same. They thought they were better, than me. And so. Hey, Gus, I got to step away for 1 second. Can I step away?
No problem, sir.
All right, hold on 1 second.
Yes, sir. Context of white supremacy. Gus T Renegade and Dr. Khalif Muhammad, a.k.a. SynQ. Take this moment to tell folks, if you find the broadcast to be of constructive value, favorite the program. That is helpful. If you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, you can just, there's a red heart on the player. If you click that will favorite the show. That's great. Subscribe. You can click that link. That way you'll know anytime that programs are just come about spontaneously or pretty quickly and they're unannounced. You will get an email notification anytime a program is going to go down. If you want to be in the loop about when broadcasts are going to happen, let's see other info. As I said, we'll be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, and 4 p.m. Pacific with University of South Carolina's David Crockett. Should be constructive. Looking forward to that. Let's see, other future broadcasts. Can't think of any right now. I will take this opportunity, folks, if you would like to drop Justice a line, her email address, justice.asap@yahoo.com. Again, justice.asap@yahoo.com. I will play Mr. Edward Williams' commercial really quick, and hopefully we'll be right back at you.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? CounterRacism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by CounterRacism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
And we are back. Dr. Muhammad, please continue.
Oh, yes, sir. Okay, so I remember different instances where, because of that house, they had the white guys, they're a lot more wealthier than us. I mean, I can't even figure out how the dynamics were even working in that neighborhood of how we all interacted and got there. But their dad was a jeweler. He owned a jewelry watch repair shop in the downtown area back then, and that was a pretty booming thing. And he used to work out of his garage, repairing jewelry and stuff like that. So all I can say is whenever we did go over there, before they stopped allowing me to be in the house, they just had a lot of fun things to do, a lot of toys and a lot of games, a lot of different kinds of foods and stuff that they had that it just seemed like it was really, it was like a vacation, just like you was saying earlier. It was kind of like that. You go in the house, it's always peaceful. And that was the first time I can remember when they would cuss at their parents. And that was something that I really did not understand. And I remember coming home trying to try out what I saw, and it did not work. I remember my mother giving me a good slap. And that's not going to work. I said, but Josh and Aaron did it. Well, that's over there. But anyway, because of the seemingly vacation-like atmosphere that they had in their house, whenever I was restricted, because I was restricted from going in there, that created a different type of dynamic with the Mexicans who stayed next door, because, as I said, whenever it allowed Josh to have power over them, which made it just made the situation different, and there was a lot of shadowboxing going on, because he was basically, instead of him having to do any kind of actual aggressiveness or anything towards me, it was the way that he would use them. It would always be in playing the games or whatever, but it was always tied into if they wanted to be his friend, if they wanted to be able to go into his house and be able to share in the things that he had going on in there, all of the fun stuff that we were doing. They pretty much did what he said. I did too. A lot of times I did too, even though I wasn't allowed in that house, because I was trying to get back in. I was trying to do what I could to let them see that hey, let me in. Many years later they did decide to say, I think Josh one time went in there and asked his folks, begged them or whatever, and they was like, okay. And I came inside, and I was like, woo, but I remember a particular instance where it was the one and only time that I was able to, it was like me and the Mexicans against Josh and his brother. And he Josh came up with an idea when we were against him. We were coming down on him about all of this stuff, how he always putting us against each other and all this kind of stuff. And he started crying, and he said, well, I got an idea. So it was probably for about an hour that it was me and the Mexican against him. He said, I got an idea. Let's make a contract. Okay, we're like about, I'm thinking I'm either like 9 or 10. I can't really put it precisely, but if he comes up with the idea of making a contract, first time I ever even seen it. You can hear about him all the time, but he went in his house, he got a pen and some, and he came back outside, and we wrote up a contract. And in that contract, he wrote how we were all going to be a pact. We were going to, shake on, make an agreement that we were going to be a pact, that all of us were going to be together. I remember we even did the Three Musketeers type thing, all one for all type of thing. This was going to be us. We were going to be together, and nobody was going to come between us. And we were like all for it, and we signed our names. He had us sign. We put our names on it and everything. And we were like, all right, we got a contract. And I was happy and excited because I was like, man, all these other times where they're always against me, this stuff is not going to happen anymore. It's going to be all of us together. We're going to be, happy-go-lucky. I didn't use those words. I'm just, Anyway, it was not long after that, maybe a day or two after that, where it was them against me again. And I remember saying, what about the contract? And Josh made a big show of it. He was like, what about the contract? What about it? Forget that contract. And he went inside the house and got it and came back outside and ripped it up. And I was like, I just was just like, man, I got duped again. That's how I felt.
Wow.
So, but anyway, the shadowboxing was kind of going on between me and them. I haven't observed how shadowboxing works without immediate suspect being nearby somewhere. So, like when the situation happened between the two non-white females, the one that was the enforcement official and the other one that was the Black Panther.
Yes, sir.
I suspected, when that was all going on, that there was a racist suspect involved. But I did not get to the bottom of that until I started asking questions. When I questioned both non-white females, that racist suspect, the principal, kept popping up. And that's when I realized that, there's some possible shadowboxing going on. So, as far as it going on, so are you saying, if I'm in a relationship with a non-white female, and her and I are at odds with each other, we're arguing, or there's stuff going on, that's shadowboxing as well, because is that what you're saying?
Well, how about you share your understanding of the concept of shadowboxing, and then we'll see if that applies. So let's get your understanding of the concept of shadowboxing. Okay.
Well, my concept, I believe, is the same one I read in the code. I should go and grab my copy real quick. But what I'm saying is I've observed how it works directly, like with direct contact with a suspect. Seeing it indirectly is the part that's a bit cloudy for me. So I'm not saying that it's not possible, just saying that I haven't seen it. So now I could see how. So, for example, like two victims of racism are, in a relationship together. sexual relationship and make the non-white male whenever he goes to there might be a white woman there who may be nice to him, give him some gifts or something, or one they hang out together, at lunchtime or something. They're taking their lunch break and they're talking, and perhaps he may get an image in his mind that, every time I sit down with her hand, it's kind of pleasant. It's kind of pleasant when I'm talking to her. I don't think any time that I've ever talked to her, I had a disagreement on anything. And then when he leaves work, he goes back to his attempted marriage, and his place, they get into an argument, some kind of, frustrated argument. And the first thing that pops in his head is he thinks about Mary Ann, and maybe he might, there's probably some kind of comparison going on, because I think related to, if that's a way to make some shadowboxing occur indirectly. The way I see shadowboxing occurring is when a racist white supremacist is actually telling a non-white person certain things that is going to get that non-white person to conflict with another non-white person that racist white supremacist has directed them to. They're saying, hey, go over here and talk to them. You know what's a good, I see shadowboxing on the news a lot, like especially on the Fox network, like on Fox or on CNN. Usually they'll get. You have a clip on your blog that I just watched yesterday about Sandra Bullock adopting a black child.
Lisa Marie Rollins. She was on the program.
Oh, she was. Okay. So on that episode of CNN, there's shadowboxing going on there between her and Don Lemon. And it appears to me that, because if you know anything about broadcasting, none of the broadcasters, anything that the newscaster that says or does is all planned. It's all scripted. None of it is done without the okay or the approval of the director. There's a director on those broadcasting. When they do the broadcasting, there's a set. Usually you have 3 camera persons operating the cameras. And then you have a director who directs the camera person, and that director is also directing the people who are on camera through the micro, the headphone. They have a headphone, and they're telling that person, like they'll tell that person to smile, or they'll tell that person to turn their head a certain way. And then they also have, a lot of times those newscasters have a script that's right in front of them. So even though they're reading off the script, they could either read off the script, or they could also look at the machine that's called a teleprompter, where it's the script, but it's on a screen that's behind the camera. So when the newscaster is looking into the camera, the viewers can't see the teleprompter, but the teleprompter is like right on the side of the camera, telling him what to say and do. So anytime you see anything that's going on a show like that, it's always nothing that the newscaster does. They don't do it unless the director authorizes it. And when I saw how Don Lemon was, he already stayed off. He didn't really say anything to the white person who, you know, showed her children. They showed pictures of her. See, and even that would, if you really think about it, even that can tell you that it was planned, because how could they get pictures of her and her children and her non-white children up on the screen that fast? It had to be planned. She had to, you know, somebody had to have said, hey, you know, do you have any? Let us see those pictures of you and your children. In order for her to, you know, and then they gotta go through a process. They gotta scan it or whatever it is they gotta do to it, so they can be able to show it up on the screen so the viewers can see it. That's a prime example of what I'm saying as far as some planned shadowboxing. They you know, told Don Lemon to ask these specific questions and open up and talk about the things that he was talking about with the non-white person. You know, in order to get the reaction that they got out of her. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So from that, looking at that, you know, again, that would be, for me, that would be some direct shadow boxing going on, because there's somebody that is saying, look at here, you know, they're taking the non-white person and they're making that non-white person or influencing that non-white person to cause a conflict with a designated non-white person, the target, as opposed to you know, the indirect thing, which what I would say would be more like you know, it just would seem more vague. Where when I picked up on shadowboxing, that's how I picked it up. I just picked it up as being something that was, I get it on YouTube. Also, there's a guy on YouTube named Slam 482 or something like that. That guy, I never heard of him until I made a video against. It wasn't a video against him, but a racist suspect on YouTube by the name of Kikilo. 37. He's Corsican, I would say Corsican's mentor or something. Somewhere. Wow. Somewhere along that line. But that's how Corsican followed me to the code.net. You know, Corsican was not even thinking about it until Kikilo. And so this guy Kikilo, he, I guess in a conversation with Slam, he just had Slam, you know, I don't know what their conversation must have been like, but I can imagine it had to have been something like, you know, this guy is a discredit to your face, and you need to talk to him, you need to get on him and make him change his ways, because he's a racist and all the stuff that he's telling your people, bad example for your people or something. I can imagine some kind of words like that being said to Slam, and Slam coming on and, you know, directing all of these comments to me. You know, you're Uncle Tom, and you don't know how to, you know, you're way in the back. You need to be in the modern times. You know, white people are not bad. Not all white people are bad, or whatever. And you know, I constantly telling them, I said, look, I never said that. You know, I'm only talking about the racist white supremacists. That's all I'm talking about. I'm just talking about what they're doing. You know, and he, you know, he would just constantly. If you ever look into some of my videos and look for the comments directed by Slam, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. An attempted shadowboxing with him and I, because he was directed to do it.
What and for folks who are listening in, if you would like to check out Dr. Muhammad, aka SynQ's YouTube page, you can see the videos and the comments that these folks have left. All you have to do is click SynQ. It will take you right to his page. The address youtube.com/user/SynQ, SYNQ. What strategies have you found that work well to minimize the conflict with other non-white people when you suspect that some shadowboxing might be going on?
Hey, 4 words that come right out of the code: no contact, no conflict. That's the best strategy that it always works. No contact, no conflict. Also, there's a video that was made by, I think it was made by Ed Williams, that's on YouTube, or it could be what's the guy's name? There was a young guy that used to come on there and make videos as well.
Asafo?
Asafo, there we go. I think it might have been made by him, but there's a video called Compensatory Conversation Control. And compensatory conversation control, the way I'm thinking it works, if I remember correctly, because I have used it, is that whenever you never respond to statements, you only respond to questions. And so when you're involved with someone, a non-white person that you suspect that you are having conflict with, you're involved with non-white person you're having conflict with, you practice compensatory conversation control first. And then if after you practice that, if it still does not work, where that person is still attempting to have conflict with you, that's when you just cut off all contact with them. So no contact, no conflict.
Wow. I want to make sure I tell folks, Lisa Marie Rollins, in addition to being on CNN discussing the whole controversy with the suspected racist known as Sandra Bullock, she was on the Cows February 1st. She was here and we talked about so-called transracial adoption, and she has 2 white parents. We talked about that, and it was pretty interesting broadcast. You can dig back in the February archives, and yeah, she was here. I have found that works very well, not responding to statements, only responding to questions. And in fact, I use that myself if I'm in an environment where I think there could be conflict, if I'm around other victims, where I will not make statements. I will just ask questions. If anything, I might just be quiet, but I certainly will not make statements about anything, because I found it's very easy for people to respond. It's very easy for conflict to ensue if you're making statements. People don't like what you said and that sort of thing. If you're just asking questions, it's a little more difficult. Plus, I found if you're asking questions, you're giving other people the chance to talk. Conflict tends to decrease if you just keep giving people the microphone so that they're talking and you're not talking. I found that works really well. Again, privilege, our guest, second time, Dr. Khalif Muhammad, a.k.a. SynQ. When we spoke before the first broadcast, you shared that you wanted to make sure that you touched on black power, and I guess just you wanted to make sure that you shared some views on that. Can you share with our listeners your thoughts on so-called black power?
Those noises. What was that one? I couldn't hear that. I couldn't pick it out. But
that's my man James. James Brown. Let's see it. We got.
Oh, got it. Okay. Man, I like those gadgets on the board there, and how you switching them. That's pretty nice. Black power. I think that the original meaning of black power was actually to counter racism. It was actually to counter racism supremacy, and that was because from what I understand, it was like the down in the South you had the Klan. I guess black folks had learned that if they cast votes locally for certain individuals, that those individuals would help them to improve their conditions locally down in the South. I think this was back in the late 60s. And from what I remember correctly, the way the story went was when they found out about the power in voting. Once again, I say locally, not on a national level, but locally, they found out that they had some power in voting by being able to vote for individuals that could make changes in their favor. The racists in that area, the racist white supremacists that were locally as well, caught on to that, and they did what they did. They used deception and violence to discourage those black folks from voting, and they did it by coming up with certain things that were like totally. For example, they at the places where the black voters would have to come and vote. If you were coming there to cast your vote, the racist suspects that were there would present you with a test and say, if you can tell us how many bubbles can be produced from a bar of soap, then you'll be able to vote. They would just run people away, stand there at the door with a rifle and say, you can't come in here to vote, nigger, something like that. And from what I understand is that a group of individuals down there decided to open up their own polls, their own voting places. I think the ballots, they had these ballots, and so a lot of the black folks down there that they were encouraging to vote did not know how to read or write, and so the racist white supremacists had a ballot that had I guess they had some kind of animal on the ballot to distinguish who their people who was that they wanted to vote for. But this group, it might have been called the Lawndes County. You know what I'm talking about, Gus?
Vaguely. I would have to go back and do a little digging. But yes, it sounds very familiar. Everything that you're saying, yes. I just don't remember the name of the group. Okay,
well that group, they put a Black Panther on the back of the ballots, and that was they sent the information all throughout the county to let all the victims of racism know that, hey, even though you can't read who the people are, you can still vote. Just grab the ballot that has the Black Panther on it and flip it over. All of the names that are on that ballot, you check off, yes, those are the ones that you're going to vote for. Just check them off. And that helped those non-white people were able to put people in place politically that they believed were going to help improve their conditions down there. And so through that, by that happening, from what I understand, the term Black Power was coined because of that, because they were able to, get past the deception and the violence to get the individual non-white people down there to put the people that they needed to put in place to help end some of their mistreatment. And so that right there, to me, is what I would call countering racism. And I would say that is what true Black Power is, because it came up out of the fact that, they were trying to counter the two main tools of the racists, which is deception and violence. Black Power today, because of a huge amount of deception that we've been blasted with, propaganda that we've been blasted with for the past, I'd say past 20 or so years, has distorted or changed what the term Black Power means, those two words mean today, to most people. Anybody that doesn't do the research, and you hear Black Power, you think those people outside of, knowing what's going on will think that Black Power means the same thing that white power is. White power means racism, white supremacy. So, people will say, oh, well, Black Power, that means racism, black supremacy, which is, a non-existent thing. So, with that being about, though, you have these days, you have a lot of youth who are grasping on to they're grasping on to the concept of what Black Power is as the racists have presented it. And a lot of them are saying, okay, we want to be, so they're taking clips or looking at clips of the old days with the old Panthers and seeing stuff like that, and they're saying, okay, we need to pick up the gun. Revolution has come. It's time to pick up the gun and let's take over the system. And not really looking at the logic, not really following the logic of saying, well, who makes the gun? Where do the bullets come from? You all the way down to what you need to go and buy the bullets. The paper money that you use is made by the racist white supremacists. It's like all the way down to the smallest level. We're so dependent on the system that trying to create or start some kind of revolutionary movement is just not going to happen. It's not going to happen where it's going to be something, some kind of violent takeover. It's just not going to happen. I mean, the most powerful weapon that the racist white supremacists have they probably have some stuff that we don't even know about. Because from my understanding, from my own observations of how they are with technology, usually they're releasing technology to where we can get a hold of it, or at least we'll know about it. Probably about maybe 20 or 30 years after they've already been using it. Prime example, my dad used to be in naval intelligence back during the Vietnam War, and they used to analyze. They used to read maps. He would study maps. What was he called? He was called a photo something, but it was his job. One of his jobs was to read photos. So they'd have like a spy plane fly over an area, take pictures, and then they'd look at those pictures and then look at try to study the pictures at different angles to see if there was like an enemy base there or weapons or whatever, or if there was a large military or large army trying to move. So he said that even though they had the spy planes, he said that there used to be satellite photos that they had too. Every now and then they would get satellite photos, and he would tell me, and this is stuff that I used to hear him. Actually, he wasn't telling me this. He was having conversations with other people, and I was just small, picking up on it. But this was in the 70s, and he was talking about how they had the technology. If someone was sitting down on a bus and reading a newspaper, they had the technology to be able to use a satellite to zoom all the way in onto that newspaper and take a picture of it, and then be able to transmit that information to where they need it so they could read it. They could see it. It was that powerful. This was something in the 60s. And here it is now, maybe about, at least from my own observations, I could be incorrect, but I just found out about Google Earth about 5 or 6 years ago. and Google Earth does something similar. It doesn't zoom all the way in. They don't, allow you to zoom in on the picture so you can see people, but it's a satellite photo that allows you to really zoom in and you can study the area. And I'm just using that as an example, but I'm saying that they have atomic bombs, they got nuclear weapons, they got, there's enough there to wipe us out, any of us who want to try to commit violence. They have enough to just wipe us out really fast. So I myself personally don't think that that's the way to go as far as what people call or trying to say Black Power is today. I think that the true Black Power is counter-racism, which means using your brain and you're following the logic, you're asking a lot of questions, and you're attempting to solve problems.
Context of white supremacy, our guest, Dr. Khalif Muhammad. I'm just curious because I've heard Black people specifically, I've heard them say that, Black people need to get their army together. If we're really about getting rid of racism, white supremacy, these white people are not going to do right by us. We need to be training. We need to be going to the gun range. We need to be getting arms. Look at the people in Somalia. They're out, jacking their boats and stuff. What would your response be to that?
My response to that is that it's not going to work. It's not going to work here. Somalia is a bit different because there are racist white supremacists there who are capitalizing off of what the Somalians are doing. They're behind that. It's a difference. There's nothing that we do, everything that we're doing, including us having this conversation right now here on Blog Talk Radio, is because they have allowed us to do it. I mean, that's the real logic in it. There's nothing that aside from your very own immediate power that I could see, in my opinion, that would be enough to really have an effect to where that such an armed revolution is going to work. I just don't see it. Did I answer the question, or am I talking around it?
No, I believe you. I think you answered it dead on. I don't think you danced at all. I just want to second that, and I believe I said at the beginning of the program, I am going to attempt to do a broadcast this weekend, white people permitting. That is directly from Back of the Bus. He says that frequently everything ends with white people permitting, white people permitting, white people permitting, just to make sure that we're all aware of everything that is happening. White people are allowing non-white people to do, including this radio program, and I've said that on this broadcast before, that I will do the program as long as I am able and as long as white people allow me to do this program. I definitely have experienced where white people have revoked my permit to do these broadcasts, and the program ended. So I have no illusions about that at all. I also wanted to make sure that I didn't miss, because you said with regards to Black Power that suspected racists are giving out bits of information, not the whole picture, but just giving out bits of information to kind of push Black people onto this Black Power and getting guns, some sort of armed revolution. We talked about how it can benefit racist man and racist woman to give out a few crumbs of information, even if they do give you some honest information about racism, white supremacy. it can be to benefit the system of white supremacy. Can you share your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Well, in relation to like the so-called revolution, it can really benefit them if the way I looked at, just now when we're talking about it. So when we say information, because I just saw something else that would benefit a racist white supremacist, but it wasn't information. So you're saying if they put out a little piece of information and we will put it, some non-white people take that information and react to it, it'll benefit the racist white supremacists? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. That a suspected racist, either in the context of giving out bits of information about things that happened during the so-called civil rights movement, or if it's the admitted white supremacist known as Tim Wise, giving out some bits of accurate information about racism, white supremacy, that those examples can benefit the system of white supremacy.
Oh, absolutely. So when we, I see what you're saying. Because I have encountered, I think that's, how Tim Wise has been able to mesmerize so many of us is, so you have certain racist suspects, I think, who they seek to make the system more comfortable for us. They seek to, in the code book, there's two methods. It describes, I believe, in the compensatory definition section. There's like two methods of racism, white supremacy that I can see. I agree with them. These two methods. One is called, or I agree that they exist. One is called liberalism, and the other one is like conservatism. So one is liberal racism, white supremacy. The other one's conservative racism, white supremacy. And so a liberal racist white supremacist would be the type of racist that seeks to make racism, white supremacy more comfortable for its victims. And they can do that by agreeing with the truth. For saying, they might come out and say, I'll give you a good example. Clinton, Bill Clinton, is a good example of a liberal racist suspect because, he can get on the TV set and blow a saxophone, and all of a sudden, all of the black folks are calling him the first black president or something, But I remember when he very crafty about what he did. He made sure that when he made an apology for slavery to black folks. He apologized for slavery. When he made it, he was outside of the country. He was, I believe he was in Ghana when he made the apology. But when a lot of black folks heard about it, my mother, she ran with it. My mother-in-law, she ran with it. She was like, you couldn't say anything, that you couldn't point out any incorrect things that this guy has done. You couldn't point out, as far as she was concerned, he could never be a racist white supremacist. He could never be even a racist suspect. He was immediately taken off the list. Well, I don't think he was ever even on the list, for her. And I hear it. I've heard it in a lot of conversations with boards when I'm talking to them. And we're talking. If he ever comes up, they always talk about, oh, he did this, he did that for black people. He was this and this and this, and he to all these things that all of these sayings that they're saying that he's done. But when I've asked him to tell me exactly what is it that he has done, nobody can really say anything. Other than that he apologized for slavery. So that's a piece, of information, where he, someone would do that. And I've seen now it's just like something that just throws you off guard. Another way of being thrown off guard too is I've seen how some racist suspects have called it by calling themselves a Jew, or even saying that they are gay, or lesbian, by throwing those terms out there, a non-white person has taken their guard down and even suspected this person could be a racist just because of that. Is that along the lines of what we're talking about, or do you need something more specific about information? Was something more specific you were talking about?
No, I mean, don't feel constrained by our previous, conversation. Feel free, share, take the questions however you want to take them to share information. But yeah, that's exactly pretty much what we talked about before. And I think especially with so-called gay people, I have seen that a lot, where it works very well to get the non-white person to not be suspicious. They will perceive that white person who is so-called gay as also being a victim of quote-unquote oppression. I've seen that work very well, and there's a lot of that at conferences, like the White Privilege Conference. There's a lot of that. It's, I believe, Dr. Ali in the area of the world known as the United Kingdom, he calls it conflation, where they will just kind of throw all this stuff in together, a disorderly jumble. And I mean, you talk about tons of white people who get a pass. They are not suspects. They are on the team. These are good white people. No suspicion about them at all. And they'll give you some information too. They'll tell you a little bit about how racism, white supremacy works. And man, they have carte blanche with victims of white supremacy.
Right. That's right. Conflation. I like that term. Yeah. The one, it was something that you had said that made me think of something else. It seems like the system benefits, or it appears to me that the system benefits more from non-white people being suspicious of other non-white people and being extremely trusting of white people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the balance between people can come. Like, I agree with the code when it says that justice is balanced between people. And I think the balance will start, or it can come when we start being suspicious of white people as well. So you don't stop being suspicious of non-white people, but be suspicious of white people as well. And then that brings in a balance, because now you're questioning everything. You're asking questions of the non-white person, and you're asking questions of the white person.
Wow, I love that suggestion. I think that would be very constructive, and in fact, I've said repeatedly, I know as a black male in the system of racism, white supremacy, I don't have any credibility. But I tell people, if you had the same regard for white people that you have for me, when they start talking about racism, we would be great. Be just as incredulous, just as suspicious. When you hear me talking and you're looking at me crazy, like, you don't know what you're talking about, that's crazy. Where did you get that from? Have that same mindset when you're hearing Tim Wise. Have that same mindset when it's Bill Clinton. Same mindset will be great. You don't have to change how you feel about me. Just, take the same way, direct that at white people. So you're just as suspicious. We would be great.
That's right.
Let's see, we have, once again, a full switchboard of people that called in for you. I have some other questions, but I'm going to tip to the switchboard so they get an opportunity to shoot some questions if they have some. And I still have my list, so we should be good. Let's see, I'm going to go. I believe this is someone calling in from Skype. Person that called in from Skype with a hand up. Your line is open if you have a question for Dr. Khalif Muhammad.
Good evening, Gus, and good evening, Dr. Muhammad.
Greetings. I believe is Mr. Scotty Red from the Black Talk Radio Network.
Yes, it is. Excellent program. I caught the first half that you did with him on Sunday, and it was great, and this is great as well. I wonder if I may, I have a question, but I would like to make a comment first on earlier you guys were talking about whether or not a armed revolution could be successful in the United States. I spent 6 years in the U.S. Army as a communications specialist, and I have to agree with both of you gentlemen, and that it's just not successful. The technology that they have, they know everything that we do, they know everything that we say. It is just not possible. What I do advocate, though, is something that Malcolm X advocated, and that is rifle clubs, is the way that he put it. But if you look at what happened down in New Orleans during Katrina, how black folks were shot down like dogs by Roman posses, vigilantes, not only by vigilantes, but also by police officers. And so I do believe that we do need a localized militia to protect our communities when such things happen. But as far as a wholesale revolution against the United States, I don't believe that it's possible. I just don't believe it's possible. We don't have the arms. We don't have the ammunition. We don't have the communication network. We just don't have everything that, it would take to do that. And so I just wanted to concur with you guys that I don't believe that that is would be a wise thing to try to do in this country, but try to set up our own localized militias, because Caucasians have them. They have them, and we need to have them too, to protect our local communities. The question I want to ask you is about the black church. Would you agree that the black church has done a lot to emasculate the black community when it comes to standing up to white supremacy? And not only that, do you think that they support white supremacy by way of their support of Israel? And I'll listen offline. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, I don't see how I could. I don't see the black church as though it's like, if it's one group. I mean, there's many black churches, and though from my own experiences and observations, I have been to a lot of black churches who do support Israel. I've been to a lot of black churches who do encourage the cooperation or cooperating with the system of racism, white supremacy. But that's just because there's not effective numbers of non-white people who are attempting to counter what the black churches go by. Historically, what a lot of the black churches, the information a lot of the black churches go off of, or what they use or present in their churches, it's a behavior that comes all the way back. It comes from slavery. There is a documentary, as a matter of fact, it's a good one for everyone to watch, that was actually put out by the History Channel. It's called Black Preachers. And watching that documentary, they show in the documentary how the black preacher came about, how the black church came about, but it took a black preacher to do the black church. And they talk about how the slave masters would select a slave to be the preacher, and that preacher could only have certain parts of the Bible that they would read from, that they were instructed to read from. And they also, whenever they had sermons, they could not give a sermon unless there was a white person in the room. This is, what they showed in this documentary, and they were showing how what they learned had been passed down from like generation to generation. It's like they found this way. It's actually a code. It's like a racist code that they followed. Look, when you preach, look here, nigger. When you preach to the other niggers, this is how you preach. You preach outside of this, you deviate outside of this, there's going to be a problem. And I'm going to be right here watching to make sure that you don't step outside of what I'm telling you. It's like that was the beginning, and then when that individual preacher would teach another preacher, then he passes on the same thing. So don't take my word for it, of course. Watch the documentary, and you'll kind of see how it fits in. But from me going to the different churches I've been to, they do encourage. So, for example, what a lot of people don't know, and I was explaining this to my mother-in-law as well, she goes to church a lot. And what a lot of non-white people don't know is that the current state that calls itself Israel right now is not the same Israel that's mentioned in the Bible. But a lot of people don't know that because they don't know the history of Israel and how it came about. It came about in 1948. There was some land that belonged to some other non-white people, and a group of racist white supremacists that called themselves Zionists, took that area. And when they took that area, they renamed it Israel. But you speed it up, what is that? Almost 50 years later, you have all these different generations of non-white people coming up who go to church, and they hear Israel, and then read about Israel in the Bible, and they put it all together and think it's the same thing. I see people in the church that my mother-in-law goes to constantly praising Israel and supporting Israel. But they only do it because they think it's the Israel that's in the Bible. Not everybody in there, because I haven't questioned everybody, but the people I have questioned believe that it's the same one. And I mean, it will get to the point to where it's a conflict, an argument, a huge argument trying to show them that it's not. But I learned about it because my dad had a Life magazine. He kept the magazine that came out when that happened in 1948. He kept that magazine, and it talks all about it. Anyway, I agree with what you were saying about the militias. I don't know if it will work that well because, from my own experience, in my own observation, it appears that we don't do well when we're like organization. So when the United Independent part comes in, is where we could apply the United Independent part to that, is where we would just learn. We learn about weapons. We learn about survival. We learn how to protect ourselves through reading. Through trial and error, by meeting other individuals who are willing to show us how to use weapons. There's a lot of classes out there. You can, a lot of gun stores. A lot of gun stores offer firearms training classes, courses, and stuff. You can take those and learn it. It's definitely how to defend yourself. You definitely need to know that, and I do support that. So I hope that answered his question. He's gone now, huh?
Yes, he did disconnect. I have one open line if anybody would like to call in to ask Dr. Muhammad a question. And also wanted to just reference the work we've been putting in here at the COWS, the so-called white vigilante violence that took place during Hurricane Katrina. A.C. Thompson was here. He is a white person. He went down to the New Orleans area and did an 18-month investigation on what happened with the shooting of, the execution of at least 11 black males. That was in May of 2009. He was on the program. Excellent material. And Dr. Kwabena Ashanti, he was here, and he talked extensively about how so-called Christian religion has been used to effeminize and brainwash, brain trash victims of white supremacy in this area of the world. He was here in March of 2010. Person that called in last four digits, 7158. 7158. Your line is open. If you have a question for Dr. Muhammad, go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
How you brothers doing? Peace.
Okay. I'm okay. I'm still learning, sir. Still learning.
Yes, sir. I have a two-part question. One, what is your opinion on the detrimental effect of desegregation and its destruction on the black community that followed?
Well, from what I was told, because from what I was told was that before desegregation came about, black people were more organized. I guess they had, a lot of businesses. The economically were economically stronger than they are today. But that's what I was told. I haven't, just from historically or looking at the evidence that I've seen, I haven't really seen that. So I guess I can't really have a true opinion on it because I haven't experienced it. But I've been told that before it happened, that it was, economically, black people were doing a lot better. And I didn't catch what was the last part of that question?
You mean the last part was the detrimental effect that it had on the destruction of the black community that followed.
Got
so
it.
I believe you answered.
Detrimental.
I believe you answered.
Well, one thing I can tell you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Huh?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh,
yes,
I was just going to say, I could tell you what I could, again, so those same people did tell me that it was detrimental, but I do happen to know that, I don't happen to know, but I was also told that, because all of that happened before I was, so anyway, but I was also told that, it ruined a lot of, so like you had certain people who had businesses that lost money. Certain black people who had businesses that lost money because the black folks stopped patronizing them. The white owned businesses were presented as though they were better. They were presented as though, the service here is going to be a lot better than what you were getting over there. So, come on over here. Buy our bread, because, the bread that we have comes from a factory and, stuff like that. But I guess I did answer the question. Okay.
Do you believe it was a calculated tool that white supremacists used to destroy the infrastructure in the black community, such as economics and other industrial endeavors that we have now, being that we definitely don't have that type of infrastructure now, and it makes it 100 times harder to fight white supremacy when we depend on them for everything.
Yeah, no, I don't think it did, really. You know what, the good a good book to read, at least one that I read that really opened my eyes to that, was called The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. And when I read that book, he wrote that book, I think it was like in the 30s or the late 20s, early 30s, somewhere around that time. But he was describing the same stuff, the same problems that we have now, education-wise and economic-wise. That's it. And during that time when he wrote that book, there was so-called segregation. So I don't really think that it made us any worse. I think it might have made it worse for certain non-white people who had acquired more that some of the racist white supremacists let them have. But collectively, I don't think it made us worse. Collectively, I think we've been in the same condition.
Person, I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions, and then after everybody's got their question, I'll open lines up so if people want to discuss and that sort of thing. Person that called in with a blocked number, your line is open.
Hello?
Yes, sir, Mr. 909, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm just listening.
Oh, I know. Person who called in, last four digits, 4503, 4503. Your line is open.
Hi, I'm just listening.
All right, no. Person who called in, last four digits, 8917, 8917. Your line is open.
Yes, hi, greetings. This is Abena from Racism Not Anonymous.
Oh, right on. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing the link. I'm glad I got a chance to hear Brother Dr. Muhammad sing, a.k.a. SynQ. And I was also sort of listening. I didn't have any questions or comments. Or no, one comment, just in terms of the shadow boxing, one thing I tend to experience or I think I'm experiencing is some forms of shadow boxing that sort of takes place between non-whites against other non-whites when in the presence of white, so to speak, if that makes any sense. And that's kind of what I experience sort of in the workplace where when we are in meetings, the other non-whites who are part of the unit seem to enjoy taking jabs and so forth at myself, who is another non-white, seemingly for show or crediting from the white folks. So that is just another form, as I thought about and listened to the concept of shadow boxing. But I also appreciated your description and definition, understanding of it, because then it also helped me see some other dynamics that kind of go on and play themselves out clearer in my workplace as well. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you for calling in. You can check out Racism Non-Anonymous right here at Blog Talk Radio. She broadcasts about racism all the time. Mr. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think I remember, isn't she, don't you have a channel on YouTube?
Yes, I am also the recovering African enslaved in America.
There we go.
AKA recovery AA. Huh?
Okay. I thought I recognized your voice. It sounded a little bit muffled, but okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I got Mr. Nero. Your line is open if you have a question, Mr. Nero.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Can I be heard?
Thank you for calling in. Yes, sir.
Oh, wonderful. I want to thank you for coming on the show, SynQ. Again, I listened to the archive today, actually, and I don't know how Gus kept a straight face during some of the part one of the interview in regards to the belly warming, and especially the part when you mentioned about the black males with white females that aren't very attractive. For some reason, the image of a wildebeest came to my mind. And dealing with, white females that aren't very attractive. So let me just ask you a question in regards to the belly. Well, you guys said a lot, and, I'm sure we'll, pick up more during the comment section if, Gus permitting, of course. But on the, in the belly warming with the white women that you were engaged in, can I ask you, when you guys would be in public, did you find that white woman to be affectionate toward you or distant?
You sounded distorted. Did I find her to be what now toward me?
Yeah. Would she be openly affectionate in public, or would she be kind of distant, like not wanting to hold hands or anything like that?
Yes. No, she was openly. She wanted to be openly affectionate.
Yeah, I and how would that make you feel when you be out in public and she would want to be openly affectionate? I mean, how would you handle that? Was that something that you were okay with, or did it bother you?
It bothered me. I mean, it bothered me, but I didn't do anything about it. I let it go on. But it bothered me because I really felt like I was a toy. I felt like she was trying to prove a point. And being up there with all of the stuff that I was hearing, it was increasing my fear of being lynched, to be honest with you. So not that I probably would have been lynched for the stuff that my dad used to tell me about Emmett Till and stuff like that. So I felt that she was just trying to prove a point.
Interesting. So you found it to be, and this would be every time you guys would go out?
Yes, pretty much. It was certain areas that we went to that she was doing that in. It wasn't. It would happen every time, but only in certain areas. We did a lot of traveling around Anchorage whenever we would go out. So
interesting.
Let's see. Last four digits. 1386. 1386. Your line is open. Person who called in at 1386, last four digits 1386. Did you have a question, or are you just listening?
Oh, I'm just listening. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No
I'm sorry. I'm really just listening right now. I found the conversation to be pretty interesting, especially the part when you were just discussing about the black businesses and the the fact that black people did much better before segregation, and how after desegregation, or when black people were allowed to go in white stores and stuff, how businesses fell off in the black communities. And I think it's because it's always been a desire to get what white people have. So that's an innate desire that was created through the enslavement process. So that's why the white man's ice always seems colder, because we've been designed to think like that. So, that's why the businesses failed. Because if they were doing well before, what other reason would they have to go, shop somewhere else where they weren't even wanted? It's because they always desired what they were denied. When you think that a possible explanation for the sudden drop-off in services, business, supporting black business that you've been supporting all the time, as soon as the doors get open to the white man's business, you run over there. When you think that was a plausible explanation for that, is because you've been indoctrinated to think, because you've been denied. And I think what we find is most things that we're denied, we want it even more. So once the doors open to what was denied us, we just ran over there and been going over there ever since.
Was that a question?
No, that was just a comment. I was listening, but that was I was thinking as I was listening. I was just sharing that thought with you, basically.
Okay.
Folks, I open the lines up, so if other people have questions, that's fine. If not, I had other questions, but I'll open it up if anybody has a question. If you could please keep the background noise down, that would be great. If you are in a noisy environment, or if you got other things going on, if you could mute your phone, that would be great. But as long as it's quiet, no problem. But if anybody has questions, go ahead.
Well, this is Abena. I have a question just about how shadowboxing might show up with non-whites against other non-whites. Would that be sort of still an accurate description to call it shadowboxing, or would it be something different?
I'm not. I think the reason that it's called shadowboxing, of course, I think Fuller is the one that came up with the term. He's probably the best person to ask, but it sounds like to me that if you try to box your own shadow, try to fight your shadow, it's nothing's going to happen. You don't change anything when you're trying to fight your shadow. And I think that's the reason why the term shadow box is a constructive term to use when one non-white person is fighting another non-white person, because it's like you're doing nothing. You're not changing the condition. You're not changing the situation at all.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. I see it clear.
You're welcome. So I'd like to, if no one has any questions, I did want to say that the code says that everyone should have an ultimate objective. If you're here on the planet, you should have some type of purpose. And think that everyone's purpose should be to eliminate the system of racism and white supremacy. And in doing that, from my perspective, where I see my taking part in that is by helping to create effective numbers of non-white people who can be thinking, speaking, and acting to eliminate racism and white supremacy. And so that was my motivation for getting on YouTube, was to make the video, to read parts of the code, to actually see if other people would hear it and say, "Oh man, that sounds. I like where that's going. Let me go and get the code and try to practice counter-racism science." And so I'd like to see, be nice for anybody that's listening to the program tonight to, whenever you find the time to do it, to take, get on Blog Talk Radio and start your radio show, on YouTube, and start your YouTube programs, or go out and, bring up a blog. Those things are free. Blog Talk Radio is free. The YouTube is free. Blogger.com and creating a blog. They also have WordPress, going there to create a blog, and just talking about your experiences with racism, white supremacy, and coming up with some suggestions or solutions to help non-white people. Basing it all, of course, on revealing truth, promoting justice, and helping the person who needs the most constructive help. Because we really need that. The more people we have, effective numbers of people doing it, the quicker the change is going to happen.
That was one of the things that we talked about before, I guess. Can you share some of the obstacles that you observe that keep that retards there being that quantum number of non-white people who are working to replace white supremacy with justice, and if you have some suggestions on ways to generate more non-white people who have that as their purpose for being on a planet that's dominated by white supremacy?
Yes. One thing that I could see, and the code points it out. The code, I believe the code calls it two reactions. Racism, white supremacy. One is cooperation with, the other one is resistance to. So what I get out of that is that means that, since racism, white supremacy is affecting us in all places, at all times, or if racism, white supremacy is affecting us at all places, at all times, and in all people activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. If it is doing that, then we are at any time either cooperating with it or we are resisting it. And we were born into it, so by being born into it, I don't want to say the word naturally, you are accustomed to cooperating with it. And what we have to do is find all of those moments when we can resist it and increase the resistance. What happens, though, is that in the system, I think the way it's designed is that cooperation that we are accustomed to following is what keeps it going. I imagine us all like a bunch of mice on these little wheels that are turning, and there's like a carrot in front of, we're trying to chase that carrot, and those wheels that we're on that are turning are like connected to wires that are generated. So every time we turn the wheel, it's generating like a lot of electricity. It's like kind of keeping the lights of racism, white supremacy on, and we got to find a way to stop the wheels from turning. But basically, with me, I use me as the best example when I first read the code and decided to make it my ultimate objective to attempt to reveal truth, promote justice, and help the person who needs the most constructive help. I got on YouTube and I made all kinds of YouTube videos. I had a lot of time on my hands to do it because at the time I was not using any kind of labor. I had not figured out how to make my labor produce money for me to pay the bills. So, I was pretty much not working, so to speak. And that gave me the time that I needed to focus on trying to do the counter-racist work. And then all of a sudden, I got involved in a business, business opportunity, and I've been involved in that thing for so much, gotten so busy that it has actually taken away my time to focus on, doing the work, the counter-racist work. And I think that's the way that the system functions. Like a lot of us who are, are not working for someone else or not doing something that's going to bring in money, are encouraged to do it. We're encouraged to find some kind of way to bring in the money. We're encouraged to find some kind of way to work. If you're not working for someone, you're not doing that, then you're put down, you're told that you're lazy, you're told that, you're whatever else is associated with not being able to work for someone. But the reality of it is that we're always working, we're always laboring. You just have to find a way to get value, for someone to see value in your work, which is what me and Gus were talking about before, which is the reason why, I think one of the reasons why we don't have enough people countering racism is because white people don't value it. They don't value the countering racism work, so there's no money in it. And because there's no money in it, most of us are tired of spending up all of our time trying to go after what we need to do to get the money. And the thing about it is that it's like a paradox, because the more people that you have getting involved in the counter-racism, the more valuable it's going to become. Like Gus, doing these programs and making these programs like he does, the more listeners he gets, the more people that are interested in these programs and wanting to hear it, they're going to start to see the value in it. And instead of Gus coming to a point where he has to end it, anybody that sees value in it is going to do what they can to keep it going. And that's the way counter-racist work has to be. Because if I had a lot of people that showed me that they valued the videos or they valued the speaking or the blogs or whatever, if there was a value in it, I would pull myself immediately away from cooperating with the system and trying to do more of that, because that is the resistance is. At least it should be. I mean, we have to keep trying. It's not, so far the work that we're doing, Gus, you can agree with me. So far the work that we're doing, it's a lot of work, but we know that it has not done anything yet to bring down the system. But if people find it constructive, it does have value, and making it have that value is what we need. So help us make effective numbers. Help us get effective numbers of people doing it. One of the ways I think that we can have effective numbers is is by constantly doing this, having these talk shows, having like I said, a blog or some videos. Counterracism.com is great at that, because when you go there, they actually have counter-racist experiments that you can put into practice. You can learn and see the effects of the system. See, run these experiments and find out ways that can help you solve your own problems when you are encountering or being victimized by racism, white supremacy. That kind of the more that we have people doing that, I think it will increase the numbers. One of the things that I want to get into is like promoting counter racism by having T-shirts or artwork or comic books, different little movies, little plays, little skits, little things like that that will attract the attention of other victims of racism. Hey, this is constructive. I like how they did this. This is really going to help me change this thing. You see what I'm saying, Gus?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Just the work having a value. I mean, of course, the system of white supremacy is the principal culprit as to why this work does not have much value in terms of direct compensation. But I think what you said about if you can generate more people to do the work, then I think that might begin to change, maybe. That might begin to change. And I definitely think, particularly if you can show people why this is something that they should be doing. Not that you need to, don't do anything else in life but replace white supremacy with justice, but just understanding that whatever path you choose to go, you're going to run into racism, white supremacy. I think if you take the same approach that the white people who believe in and practice racism, white supremacy, whatever they do, they're going to be doing that and practicing racism. So if they're going to be, building airplanes, it's going to be doing that and practicing racism. We should take the same approach. Whatever we're doing, it's that and practicing counter-racism. So if you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you want to do promotion, advertising, marketing, fine, do that and replace white supremacy with justice.
Right. Or find a way, because what I see is, I see all of those things as being the motivating force. I see racism and white supremacy as being the motivating force behind those things. Like for example, if I need to, let's for example, there's a resource I need to get. And I know I need to get that resource because that resource is going to help me survive, or it's going to help me extend my ideology. How am I going to get that resource? And if that resource is 3,000 or 4,000 miles away, and I know that having that resource really fast, trying to get that resource as quick as I can, is going to help me promote racism, white supremacy, then I'm going to create an airplane, or build an airplane, or find a way to get access to an airplane that's going to take me 3,000 miles to get that resource that I need to help me continue to promote it. You know what I'm saying?
That makes sense. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think Mr. Fuller has said the same thing, that racism, white supremacy is the driving motivation for why white people do all the things that they do and build bridges and all the other gadgets and things, that satellites that can take photographs of the funny papers that you're reading.
Yeah. that are here. That I suspect that you could probably attribute weapons to that. Guns. At one time, you're thinking about you're thinking about dominating the planet, and subjugating it. You've got to have the right type of machinery, the right type of weapons that are going to help you win. It seems to me that racism, white supremacy is the motivating force behind building a nuclear weapon, because you've got the weapon, and now you're saying, look, you better watch out. I might use this because I got the most powerful weapon on the planet. And really, when you think about it, the only time that a nuclear weapon has ever been used was when white people dropped it. They used that weapon against non-white people who were, I suspect the white people who made the decision to drop it on them thought that they were at the brink, or nah, they weren't at the brink. I was going to say maybe they thought they were at the brink of losing the war, but I think really they were at the brink of just wanting to test. They wanted to just experiment and see if this nuclear weapon was going to work. But at the same time, it sent a message all around the world to other non-white people that, better calm down.
Yeah, that should be a program. A listener, Khadijah, she sent me a link. A non-white person wrote a book about World War II and how that was a war of white supremacy, and it talks specifically about what happened with the area of the world known as Japan. So yeah, we should be able to get into that. But yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. A message sent around the world. We'll have photographs of mushroom clouds that we can send anytime the Negroes start talking about revolution and they want to get at us. Remember, this could be you.
That's right. That's right. And right now there's an ongoing, political thing going on where there's a struggle where, certain so-called nations that appear to be led by non-white people are looking to get nuclear technology, and it's very difficult for them to do, and it's also being looked upon, or they're being called, whatever kind of negative term you can think of to make it appear like they should not have any nuclear technology.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I believe they had a test at some point, and it didn't go well. And it seemed like suspected racists used that as a moment to gloat over the inferior technology of the non-white people.
Right. But that's usually the way we learn by trial and error. So.
I did want to let Mr. Nero know, frequently when I'm on the program, I am muted when the other person is talking so that it'll be crystal clear and there won't be any disruption if I move around or if I have to type, because I'm hosting the program, so I have to do things frequently, so I'm muted. So if I am snickering at anything that is said on the broadcast, it's generally not picked up because I'm muted. So that's how often when things are said that are funny, you don't hear me laughing because I'm muted.
Oh, who's Mr. Nero?
Gentleman, he should be on the line now. Are you still with us, Mr. Nero?
Yeah, I'm muted because I got a lot of background noise right now.
Oh, okay. See, yeah, he's with us now. Yeah,
but I have been laughing as well.
Right on. Yeah, I use my mute button liberally during the programs. If it's a suspected racist or admitted racist, frequently I am snickering in the background, or just I cannot believe this guy. depending on who's on the program, the things that you don't hear when Timothy is on the broadcast, man.
Yeah, he's really good with words. Extremely good with words.
He's outstanding. That should be codified too, though. I was thinking about that I don't think non-white people can use that as a crutch, right? To continue to be deficient at countering racism, white supremacy. I think the example that you shared earlier about the non-white people who had literacy deficiencies, so they codified that. They made a compensatory code. They used the panther on the back of the ballot to compensate for that, to counter white supremacy. I think non-white people, we need to codify how to deal with racist men and racist women who are superior in terms of their skill with words, because there has to be a code to how you deal with that as well. And I think a lot of it is just simplifying things. I don't think you have to go to school for, 20 years or go sit and read the whole dictionary. A lot of it can just be about simplifying terms and asking questions. In fact, you can make them see. That's one thing you can do. Anytime you are in contact with someone who is more skilled than you are with anything, you should try and get as much information from that person as possible. So if somebody is speaking to you and they're more skilled with words, get them to explain any terms that they use that you don't understand. Explain it to me. That way I'll know it and I can use the term if I think it'll help me replace white supremacy with justice. And if not, we can kick that to the curb. And if they're an expert, they should be able to explain. You shouldn't have any confusion. If you're speaking to somebody who is excellent with regards to their understanding of language, you should never be confused. They should be able to explain anything to you with crystal clarity.
That's right. That is correct. You just made me think about that's another thing that I changed about my behavior, or another thing that I changed about my behavior after I started reading the code is what you just said. So, like, before I attempted to start questioning a lot, when someone would start talking, if they were skilled, or if they use a word, they might use a word or a bunch of terms that they're saying that I would not understand, and out of fear of not wanting them or not wanting to show or being, I felt like I would be embarrassed, like I'd be embarrassing myself if I did not, if I acted as though I knew what they meant. But I realized that it would just get me more confused. So I started, like I said, after being in touch with the code, I started to question. So I'll try to slow someone down. If they're talking and they say something, I'll say, hey, wait a minute, can you tell me what that means? What does that mean? If I don't, then everything else that they've said after that one word or term that was confusing me, I don't even get it. I won't even understand it.
That goes right to that aspect of fear that we were talking about. I think that's a big reason why I think that's a big underlying reason for a whole lot of things that we have talked about in terms of non-white people not wanting to confront white people, why more of us are not attempting to replace white supremacy with justice, why it's easier to just go ahead and get that white woman or white man, fear, not wanting to sound ignorant, not wanting to sound helpless and weak, why I don't want to share with other people about my experiences of being victimized, fear. Do you have any suggestions on ways non-white people can deal with their fear? Meet it.
Try to face it. I have overcome a lot of fears by just recognizing it for what it is and attempting to meet it. Like the fear that I had of showing myself on YouTube. When I first did my videos, I always did it with a mask. And the conversation I was having with an individual, by the way, I did make an attempt to go to his page, and the page was suspended. The page that I had was not up anymore. Two BB guns up. Daniel John Campbell.
Okay. Thank you for trying, though. I appreciate that.
Yeah. He changed so many pages, and anyway, he brought it to my attention. You know, he was saying, well, why are you so afraid? You should not be afraid to show yourself. And, something among, he gave me a lot of words, and something amongst the words made me think, well, what am I trying to do? Why am I trying to keep it a secret? They already know, race white Muslims already know who I am anyway. They already know. So this is just my own fear. I need to face it. So I just took it off. And I could feel these pins and needles and the hair raising up on my neck, and I felt this, nervousness about it. But once that went by, that was like for a brief moment. Once that went by, it was easy. I was on there, showing my face. There's a non-white person by the name of Les Brown, kind of like a motivational speaker back that I remember he was kind of big in the 90s, late 90s. But he had a term that I used to use also that applied to fear, and he broke it down. So it's like fear is FEAR, and he said it's false expectations appearing to be real.
False expectations appearing to be real, that was it?
Yes.
Okay.
And so whenever I think of fear, that's what I think of. A lot of times, I would think of it as being a false expectation. I'm expecting it to be a certain kind of way. And I'm trying to think of another situation where I was fearful, and I thought the whole time I was fearful that it was once I overcame. So, like, for example, so when I was wearing the mask, I was wearing the mask because I feared that the racist white supremacists were going to be knocking on my door, going to be tapping my phone. I was going to be dubbed a terrorist or something, or I was going to lose. I might when they find out who I am, I'm gonna go to the store and the lady behind the cash register is gonna spit on me and something. Yeah, I don't want to serve you, you terrorist, racist, something. And as an example, so I wanted my identity to stay anonymous, and because of all of the things that I feared might happen if I revealed my identity. But once I overcame the fear and showed my face, I realized that all of those things that I was expecting to happen were false. They were false expectations. Nothing happened any different than it did when I wore the mask. I still got the same threats. When I wore a mask, I got threats on the internet. People were saying, oh, we're going to blow your house up, nigga. We're going to do this. And when I took the mask off, I still got the same kind of threats. It really didn't, it did not increase any violence or any, pressure. I thought like I said, I was really thinking my phones were going to be tapped and all that kind of stuff. And kind of technology that's going on now, phones are already tapped. You know, you ain't got to tap phones now. They can just have some kind of listening device and just listen. You know, it's wireless. It's you know, it's just it's not a big deal. It's a false expectation. That one again. But see what I'm talking about?
Wow. I wanted to see if anybody else had anything to say before I hopped in.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Gus. This question is to you about fear. How did you wrangle with and overcome your fear of just, I mean, what comes to my mind first is with Tim Wise. I mean, just your way you wrangle with the beast. I mean, I never heard anybody just, you know, converse with one admitted white supremacist in the manner you did. It was respectful, but yet it was authoritative, and what you wanted to convey and what you wanted him to either agree or submit to one of your points. I mean, how did you overcome that fear? That's a big problem, even just with talking to white males, black males having. I mean, what you did was up one for the brothers, and we definitely have to work on that. So I just want your opinion on that.
It is tough. I mean, you know, I think, I don't remember who it was, but somebody I think this came up before, and I was saying that I don't know how many programs I've done now, but I know at Blog Talk Radio, I think it's in the neighborhood of 160, and I still get nervous before a program. I don't know how many times Tim Wise has been here now. I guess, you know, next month will be maybe his 6th time. I don't know. It's been quite a few at this point, and I'll most likely still have some nerves when it's time to get on the program. But the thing that I try and keep in mind, number one, is that just to be confident. That's the thing, really, more so than anything, is just to be confident. I would liken it to anything else. You know, if you're an actor and you're going out on stage, if you play a pro sport and you're going out to, you know, perform whatever your sport is, if you're an attorney and you got a big case, just to be confident. You know, if you've done your work, if you've practiced, if you're a doctor and you studied, you went to school, you read the books, you took the exams, you know what you're doing. That's the same way that I approach racism, white supremacy. I didn't, you know, just fall out and decide I was going to get on the radio one day. I've been studying this for quite some time now. Dr. Muhammad, he said that I should give out my credentials. I got a double major in psychology and history with a minor in African American studies. That was before I was informed about Dr. Welsing and Mr. Fuller. And even after I graduated from the University of Virginia, I'll get that out to Thomas Jefferson. That would be a cowbell ring if I had my switchboard. But and boy, I have to chat with you all a different program about that, because we used to talk about Thomas Jefferson a lot on campus. While I was at UVA, they did the DNA testing, and it came back that he most likely had some non-white offspring, and that was a big to-do. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, I studied racism, white supremacy for a long time. I believe, as Dr. Muhammad said the last program, I've invested a good portion of my time on this planet studying racism, white supremacy, and trying to understand this problem. Another cowbell, I studied under Julian Bond at the University of Virginia, and we used to talk about him being married to a white person a lot. And I studied Dr. Welsing. I studied Mr. Fuller. I listened to a lot of their lectures, as many as I could. I used to listen to the Counter-Racism Radio Network endlessly. I spent a lot of time before I got to this radio program, and it just got to be, hey, be confident. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not crazy. And particularly once I started studying Mr. Fuller's work and just being accurate with terms, It just, became, hey, you've been doing this for years. You should be comfortable talking to anyone about this subject matter. And it's like anything else. The more you do it, the more comfortable it will become. Just like basketball. The first time you go out, you might go 0 for 20. You keep playing, after a while, it'll get much easier. Specifically dealing with Tim Wise and some of these other white people who, have big names and all that, it's just like, we're just talking on the phone. This is not, black people face much hairier experiences every day than talking to Tim Wise on the phone. So it's like if we're really serious about replacing white supremacy with justice, the worst that can happen is he'll make me look stupid. That happens to us every day. I mean, the Matrix. How would that be different than what happens every other day? So it's just swing for the fence, whatever. Swing for the fence. The worst that can happen, he practices racism, white supremacy. That's what that was my thought process, because I've said this before. Dr. Welsing said, do not do, well, I don't know if she said don't do it, but she was not supportive of this. She said he'll just get an opportunity to confuse more non-white people if you bring him on the program repeatedly, and he'll just practice racism, white supremacy. I don't think it's a good idea. And I didn't agree with that. Like, I listened, and I thought she had a valid point. I said that repeatedly. I think that's a very valid point, because she said there are probably non-white people who are not familiar with him, and if they see him on your program, they'll think, oh, this guy's serious, and blah, blah, blah. Correct. He's much more skilled with words than I am, so I felt that was a valid point that she raised. But I felt that at worst, because he's Tim Wise, it will bring attention to the program, which it has to some degree. And if nothing else, it will give me an opportunity to get better. If there's a huge gap between his ability to practice racism, white supremacy, my ability to attempt to counter racism, white supremacy, if we have 20 programs, hopefully that gap should close by the time we get to 20. Okay, so if the gap is, if the gap is 20 points when we start out, hopefully, maybe it'll be 15 points by the time we get to the end of it. I mean, it's just like our situation is terrible. I don't even have a phone. I mean, there should be no pride. There should not be any concern about I'm going to look bad. This is going to be terrible. I don't have a phone. I don't really have anything to lose, and that's how I deal with my fear. What is there to lose? I mean, I try to think of as bad as thinking. What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could possibly happen going on this program, and how would that be, compared to any other day on the plantation of racism, white supremacy? And just maybe, it might not even go that way. Maybe you'll get to give a nice sock to Tim Wise, and some victims will hear, hey, this dude is really whack and racist. I'm not going to support this guy at all. And I think that's happened, at least with a few people. So that's how I deal with mine. Just, be honest about what's the worst that can happen. If you can deal with that, rock and roll.
I think what serves as a good example is the questions that you ask him. The questions that you ask him, it appears to be that if there's anything that would lead us in the correct direction for eliminating racism, white supremacy, it's the questions that you ask. It's the questioning. Because when he gets to start talking around them, or he, or doesn't address the question at all, it's like you can see the you can see the deception. You can see it. I would really like to hear your programs played. It'd be a very interesting thing to see if this radio station out here, KPFA, that loves to blast Tim Wise, if they had got a hold of one of your programs and just played it on there, it would just be amazing. It would really, I think it would really hit him in his pocket a little bit.
Might have to see about contacting them to see if they might be down to play a program or two. I don't know. I know everybody that listens doesn't think, Tim.Is is not cool. I know a lot of people, a lot of victims, they still think he's cool after listening, but I felt at the very, very beginning, he's supposed to win. He's Tim.Is, and he's a white person, admitted white supremacist. If I said at the very beginning, I would be happy if 40% of the non-white people listen to that program. If 40% of them changed their opinion of Tim.Is, I would take that at this point. I would take that, consider that a win. I don't know if that's it, but I do know that people have contacted me and said they've changed their opinion of Tim.Is. I've had people tell me that they had videos of him on their blog, and they heard him on the program, and they took him down.
Right. Right.
Hey, SynQ.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever, I know you listen to the Pacifica radio stations. Do you remember when Dr. Kwaku Person Lynn did the African Mental Liberation Weekend?
I do not, sir.
Oh, okay.
I missed that. Yeah, I only get a chance to, I don't know how recent that was. I used to listen to KPFA a lot, like every single day. But I don't now. But it seems like a lot of times when I turn it on, I'm catching Tim.Is on. That's when if I listen to the morning show, and I would catch him on, either just finishing up or getting ready to start. But I haven't. What was that? That was a weekend. You said it was for a whole weekend.
Yeah, out here we got KPFK. And,
right. I know where you're at.
Yeah, and they did that's how I heard about Dr. Wilson. It was many years ago, but yeah, I just was wondering, since you listened to Pacifica, he did it out there. His first episodes, the first it was like an annual thing, but they took him off because they had Dr. Welsing on. And the homosexuals called in and said she was preaching hate, and they took him off they took his annual program off the air. So yeah, just thought I'd ask you about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I didn't. I haven't. I had not. But I know where you're at. That's Southern California.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Yes, but I was, when you said, when Gus was talking about, it was something I was going to say about Tim.Is. I still, I think that it's, the words he uses are extremely well, but I don't know so much.
Oops. We lost Mr. SynQ. I will dial him back in. Hang tight. Should be pretty quick. Feel free to chat for these 30 seconds if you want to take up the dead air while I'm dialing him back in. Or sit quietly.
This is the phone of Khalif Muhammad. Please leave your name and number, and I'll call you back as soon as I can. Thank you.
Drop this out here. Interesting. Very interesting. I'll give it a second, and then I'll dial him back again, gang.
Gus.
If you are satisfied with your message, press 1 to listen to your message. Press 2 to erase and re-record. Press 3 to continue recording where you left off. Press 4. Are you still there? If you are satisfied with your message, press 1 to listen to your message. Press...
Dang, got him. Okay. I will try again. I'll try again. What was your question while I'm working to get him back on?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I think it's good what you said as far as calling people what they like to be called, because I had listened to this one show on Blog Talk, and it was a big conflict, and if they were to adopt that what you said, and I adopted it too, it's like then maybe 20 minutes of conflict and would have been solved.
What was the debate around, I guess, what was the term or what have you that was being debated?
Well, African and the different Islam, and was it African and just, black? Yeah, all of it. African, black, and that. Like black people don't want to be called African. Then the Africans, they didn't want to be called black. And there was a big conflict. People basically like trying to tell somebody else, no, you're black, and then no, you're not, you're African.
Yeah, I would be willing, if I had a phone, I would bet my phone. I bet no one offered a definition for any of these terms.
Nope, not at all. That's the key, man. That's the key. Nobody, they wouldn't dare offer up a definition or give one. That piece.
This phone of Khalif Muhammad.
I'll
leave your name and number, and I'll call you back in. Thank you.
I'll give him a second or two and try again. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that piece is what I found very interesting, is that they seem to be, this is just my opinion, I could be incorrect, but it really seemed to me that they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to give up any definitions, because there were like opportunities where how the conversation is streaming, or the conversation is flowing towards a direction, and it was flowing towards the direction of, what do you mean by that? Like a definition was required, and then it just took a total like U-turn. Let's go back to where we started, and with the name calling and whatnot. So I was thinking, wow, how could that be? And it just seemed it just seemed purpose. I don't know if it was true, but I don't see how they couldn't see that it was going towards, we need a definition here. And then nobody was willing to step out or give one, or say that they didn't have a definition. Maybe that was the reason. They would have had to admit that they didn't. Yeah, it was, man. I said, that's it, man. I no more. I probably shouldn't say that. Yeah, I'm not gonna say it, but I'm not gonna say that. But yeah, it was very disappointing. It was just, I was like, wow, this is terrible.
Not surprised. I will admit freely, I have been there myself many times. Not having a definition for terms, couldn't explain it. I'd even say now, I was just thinking back recently about many of the conversations that I've been in where, I can't say it was conflict, but there was disagreement. And I would say like over 60% of the times that I can think where I've had conversations about racism, and even if it wasn't conflict, but there was disagreement, the crux of it was definitions. And most of the time, people did not have clear definitions for terms. That was the crux of what was causing the disagreement, what was creating the problem in the discussion was either a lack of terms. Mostly it was a lack of terms. I can even deal if we have a difference, like if we just have a different opinion about what the meaning of a term is, or what, that's fine. In fact, that shouldn't even be a cause for conflict, as long as we know we don't have the same definition. But when people put down or people will put down definitions and they don't match up. Now, I have a big problem with that. If the definition doesn't match up with what I'm observing, then I have a problem. But that doesn't happen too often. Most of the time, there's no definition at all, or no definition at all. But wow, I'm glad you were able to make that observation. Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it was so much the key. It was just a key. Definitions, man. Wow. I said that's I don't know. It was good to it was just exciting, but yeah, it just to hear the like I said, man, I'm interested, fascinated by black people. Like some of the stuff they do, man. It's really incredible, man. It's really. And another thing, I remember I used to have a issue about people, white people, studying us, but now, for some reason, I said I would too. I mean, actually, it's fascinating, the behaviors, man, and the like you said, the conditioning and the confusion, and then that leads to behaviors that you really don't know what they're capable of. So there's all kind of randomness that goes on within the conversation, the actions, and you can only imagine what they're thinking. So
man.
Keep in mind. Oh, this is just new. I'm sorry. Keep in mind, they had scientists dedicated to trying to figure out how did these niggas get so dumb? How did this happen? Studying it.
Yep. We have about little over 3 minutes left in the broadcast. I'm not sure what happened with Dr. Muhammad's phone, but I've tried a couple times and not getting through. Saying he couldn't finish out. But we have 3 minutes left. We'll be back tomorrow. I guess real quickly, Mr. Nero 909, I had said at the beginning of the program that I would like to have black males, like a forum of black males, kind of share their views, experiences, thoughts on racism, white supremacy. Would the two of you be interested in participating?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have both of your email addresses. I'll see if we can coordinate a time with some other folks and make it happen. I'll be in touch about that. We'll be back tomorrow, as I said, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Professor David Crockett. My apologies. I wanted Dr. Muhammad to finish out. Couldn't be here, but I think he did share constructive info while he was here. My last thing, and then I'll leave the rest of the time for folks. That's, I think, a great aspect of counter-racism. Think about the consequences of what you're going to do, and if things go as poorly as possible, if you're able to accept that, maybe that's something you should do. And be honest. If it's something that you're not willing to accept, then maybe you shouldn't do it. If anybody, you got a minute and 30, anything you want to share?
I just would like to touch on this notion that black people are copying white people. I've heard that mentioned in other shows that, we copy white people. If that's the case, we're certainly not copying anything that they do constructive. The things that we seem to be copying are the things that have absolutely no value at all. So, I'm puzzled as to why that still keeps coming up, that, we're copying them, because we're not. And to me, what it looks like were like pets. And, you know, occasionally a dog does a trick you don't expect it to do. You know, it opens a door, or, you know, it's able to get into something you just don't expect it to be able to get into. And I kind of compare us to that particular situation as opposed to us copying white people, because if we were copying them, we would not be in this mess. Racism would have ended a long time ago if we were really copying white people.
We'd have definitions. That'll do it. Replace white supremacy with justice. Definitions. That's a great way to end.
I agree.
Donate to the cause.
Absolutely.